Okay, good evening, everybody. Again, it's a pleasure to be back again today, and thank you for tuning in to join us in tonight's podcast. Um, I'm gonna share a link, and I will encourage you to share the link with your friends. You can share it on your Facebook pages. You can also share it the YouTube link as well with friends and families. Um, I'm gonna post the link so you can have the opportunity to share it. But before I do that, I'm gonna bring on Kelsey Green as well. Kelsey has been with us on the show for a couple of times. Very knowledgeable in this on this very topic. Kelsey, good to see you back.
Good to see you too, Ben. Thank you for the invitation this evening.
Thank you, Bill. So I'm gonna send a link, Kelsey, if you wanna share that as well, if possible, with those on your platforms and in your network. Wanna be able to impact families as well, and for those that are going through divorce and separation, we wanna be able to share some of the experiences that you know um, we've gained along the way. That may be of help to somebody who is just about to go through this. Oh, Bill is also with us tonight. Bringing Bill on. Bill, good to have you on.
Thank you, guys. Nice to see you. Sorry I'm late.
Oh, no, 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 no. That's. It's always good to have you on. I'm so happy you're on. So I'm just sharing the link with our audience tonight, and I'm hoping that you can do the same thing as well. I'm gonna share the YouTube link uh, with uh, with those that are not able to connect with us on Facebook or Instagram. I'm gonna make that link available right now. Um, so if you are watching us, please share the love, share it with your friends, share it with your families, um, and have um, the Facebook link right here in the chat window, so you can just copy that and share it with your loved ones and your friends. And we enjoy answering some of the questions that you may have. So as we discuss on some of these topics that are so important to us, not just to us men or fathers, but to there are women as well that are so much interested in this very topic. And believe me, there are a lot of women that are fighting for us, because they believe in the cause and they think that is the right thing to do. So I'm just gonna go back to last Sunday. I mean, last Sunday was just a wonderful time with Reverend Susan O'Connor and Miss Donna Rice. I was very touched with what they shared, publicly. And I had a woman reach out to me, and she shared something very interesting. I'm gonna share that. But before I do that, Kelsey, I'm gonna, I believe you had a chance to watch, some of the show last Sunday. Your thoughts?
I'm blown away by all the different perspectives that come into it. Everybody is seeing these issues and are understanding them from different lenses, from different perspectives, and I just think it's wonderful. The more we understand how it impacts people, how people see it through their eyes, the more we can really see just how big a problem that this really is, and the more that we can understand it and understand how it affects individuals in particular. So I think it was a great show last week, Ben.
Thank you, thank you. And Bill, your thoughts?
Um, I didn't get to watch the show last week. I was tired out from camping with my children, so I went to bed early. So I'm sorry I didn't get to see that. But
Oh no.
I'm glad that you have the people on that you do, sharing their knowledge and, like Kelsey said, their perspectives on this problem. And hopefully together we can come up with some solutions to help people through this process. So,
Mhm, mhm. You know, I had a chance to do a recap with Reverend Susan after the show, and I believe that was the first time that she was looking at the statistics, and she had pulled out some numbers in terms of some of the impacts that absent fathers do have on children, and she was blown away. One thing that she said is, if this data I have in my hands is real, then we have a serious pandemic. And I said to her, it is real data that you have. I have the same data. There are so many social science studies all across North America, and they are easily available on the web. And she was blown away. She was blown away. I said, "No, this is real. This is real. This is happening to families. It's happening to children. A lot of children are being incarcerated for the mere fact that they had no father in their lives." And she had a different perspective. I mean, she didn't know this was a pandemic. And I believe part of the reason why we're all doing this is to be able to raise some level of awareness, right? Bring the story, to people, bring it to their homes, share some real life experiences story with them, just be able to create that awareness so they know that this is not just men complaining, but it is real. It is real. It's affecting a lot of children, a lot of children. Anything to add, Kelsey?
Well, I think you're very right. It's when people start to understand what the statistics are and just how serious this is, and the fact that it can't be fixed with a vaccine, it really is a pandemic. I mean, we have a serious issue here that has just been overlooked for many years, many years. And the first step is to build awareness, and that's what you're doing, and many others are doing. And then there needs to be a desire for change, and then we need to get the knowledge in the hands of the people that need it to make the change. So building awareness is the first step, and the more people that I speak with, and it sounds like you're having the same results, is that when you speak and you share some of the information, not even a lot, people start to go, "Oh my gosh, this is way bigger than I thought it was. I had no idea," and it really is. It is a pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Bill, your thoughts?
yes, there's two separate yet distinct issues that help cause this problem. The fact that the majority of mothers win custody in divorces, or are awarded custody instead. I shouldn't use the term win. It's awarded custody over fathers. It's around 86% in Canada. From the CAFE research in 2014, I believe it was about 86% single mothers had custody, and I believe it was 6% single fathers had custody at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a huge discrepancy in between the two numbers. It's not even close to being equal, and a lot of people will get sidetracked with the mother-father debate and arguing about who the child should be with. And when you're talking about parental alienation, psychological coercive controlling behavior, emotional abuse, these types of things, it's not just done by the mother or father, it's done just about equally by both men and women, the father or the mother, to the children. And that's a different statistic that you need to separate from who's getting awarded custody. The award of custody, I think, has been changing since the 70s and has continually grown to the mother having more custody. And I believe that's because that's how our society was at that time in the 70s. The father would work. Most households were a single income household. So the father worked, the mother stayed at home with the child. So when there was a divorce, the father could not continue to work to support the family when they weren't together. So this became the pattern and has stayed that since the 70s, when divorces started becoming more prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
And that statistic, I believe, and the statistics of mental health and the problems with a lot of people today with health issues or mental health issues are related to being in fatherless households or not growing up with a father figure where they can learn their gender roles, because men and women both act and behave differently, and it's a very important part of their growth and development.
Mm, mm, mm. And hopefully we'll be able to touch briefly on the mental health issues, because I think this is this is real issues that people don't talk about that much. So hopefully we'll be able to get some time to to touch on that. But right after last Sunday's show, I had a lady call me, and there's somebody that had sole custody of her children, and this woman was so impacted with some of the things that were shared on the show, and she reached out back. She reached back again to me in the course of the week, and basically some of the things that she did with regards to her children, and she had reached out to the father of her children, basically proposing that the children be shared on an equal basis, which was quite a shock, because this is very unusual. But it goes to demonstrate how much some people are being impacted with what we are doing, by being able to share some of these stories, and what people have been through in the past, because I believe if this woman had not heard from these two wonderful moms that we had on the show last week, I don't think she would have made that move at all. And she was sharing with me, she's like, no, I did not know a lot of things that you guys were sharing. I thought it was just me and my children and my ex. I didn't know it was that huge. So it sort of changed her mindset. It really turned her around, and for her to be able to make that bold step to reach out to the father of her children, to basically propose a shared parenting plan, I think it's a huge plus for the father, and as well as the children,
and for the mother as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, first of all, I think that's a remarkable story, and it would be amazing for you to have both that mother and the father on your show, perhaps in the future, to be able to share what it means to them. Because there are a lot of people who believe that if 86% of the time in Canada that families go before the court, it is custody, the decision-making responsibility goes to the mother, that the courts are really discriminating against the mother. They're forcing them, not to have a life, in a way, not to enjoy their lives in certain areas. They're forcing them to be home. Children are usually home from school first, so the mothers are being discriminated against just as much as the fathers are. And there is research to show that mothers have week on, week off, have better careers, longer careers, have richer lives, better retirements, all of these things that they put their children first in these situations where they're forced to have the decision-making responsibility by the I think we forget sometimes how sometimes that these parents who start off with or who were awarded sole decision-making responsibility really miss out on a lot. And I think that story that you've got there is really quite touching, quite impressive.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm trying to sort of get her to be bold enough to come on the show and share this personal story, because I believe it will help a lot of people. But something that you touched on, Kelsey, about shared parenting. I think when you look at shared parenting, from a broader perspective, it actually works in favor of mothers. It works in favor of mothers. Bill, what do you what do you think?
I think Kelsey was trying to highlight on that, instead of being awarding custody to one parent, say the mothers all the time in these cases, you are, as Kelsey put it, forcing them into the primary caregiving role. And that's very difficult for one person to raise children. It's not a simple process, and it is much easier for a family unit to be able to do that, where you can coordinate and work together. When there's a divorce,
Mm-hmm.
ideally both parties would work and share the responsibilities, and
Mm-hmm.
this would maintain some normalcy for the children during the adjustment period of living in two separate homes, but they're still having contact with both parents. So that there is a positive to help them recover sooner from the trauma of having their household split and their family split.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, you're right. You are, Bill. Sorry, Kelsey.
I was just going to say just to sort of reiterate that shared parenting not only helps children, is in their best interest, study after study, time after time again. We look at it, it's in the best interest of the children. It's in the best interest of the parents as well. There are times when it can't work, perhaps when parents work away, but to have those parents heavily involved, that should be the starting point. And it's funny because if you ask people who don't know about these issues, they will say, well, it is equal shared parenting in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that right now it isn't. But it's also in the best interest of our society. The costs that come out of this, right now we're seeing increases in suicides in children and parents. We're in a mental health crisis in the province of New Brunswick. It's been a significant crisis even in the last few weeks. Many of these issues are resulting directly from what happens in these cases, these mental health issues, the societal costs that go along with them. We're creating costs in the family court by making these decisions, and then our society is paying for these costs on the health and the education side later on. But we need to look at creating a net zero here between the two, where we're not creating mental health crisis for ourselves by using services or by having the services like the family courts and child protection police, who just aren't prepared in any way to deal with these matters that are so severe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, just coming back to shared parenting, for some reason, and this is something that just surprises me, that not too many of people know about shared parenting. Unfortunately, a lot of people do not know about shared parenting, and I keep asking myself why. And the reason why I ask myself why is that when you look at the divorce rate or separation rate in Canada, it's quite high. And there are many men that are being alienated, many women as well, mothers that are being alienated. Yet, people do not know much about shared parenting. Any idea why, Bill? This is, I mean, why there's so much gap in terms of knowledge?
Well, I believe there are a couple of groups that have an agenda and are putting out a lot of misinformation about the term parental alienation and what it really is. Currently in New Brunswick, there's a professor who is a lawyer and a social scientist who has written a number of reports for the federal government of Canada around the topic of alienation. And her theory of after her studying case files from reports of alienation in family court cases was that this term is completely fabricated by men who are abusive, and they are trying to come up with an excuse for the fact that they were abusive to their spouses so they can have some visitation or custody of their children. This is now these reports, I have a number of them that were written for the federal government by Linda C. Nielsen, who works at the Mirror-McQueen Ferguson for abused women and children in New Brunswick. And she does not have a medical background. She is a lawyer and a social scientist. So for her to be speaking on an issue that is a medical diagnosis of child psychological abuse, the effects of alienation on children, she's not qualified. And these reports are damaging, and they're creating a lot of conflict between the people that make decisions on healthcare and child protection services in our provinces in our country. There is one, I can't remember if it's an MP or MLA that is out west, who spoke to the other members of her council and was relaying the same message, that parental alienation doesn't exist. I have asked to be provided the copy of the footage so that I can put out a little video to show reports from professionals like Jennifer Jill Harmon out of Colorado, Dimitrios Larandros, who is a lawyer, and those two collaborated on a report that debunked the theory that parental alienation is made up and is not real, by people such as Linda C. Nielsen and Joan Meyer out of the United States, who is also a lawyer and a social scientist. Another group that is lobbying hard against the recognition of parental alienation and shared custody, or 50-50, are lawyers. Because right now, more money travels through the family courts than all the other courts combined. So this is a gravy train for all those lawyers. And if there's a joint and shared custody, the statistics from Kentucky, where they made the legislation to go to joint shared custody 50-50 as a presumption, with a rebuttable presumption, if there's a valid reason, then yes, it can be brought forward. And custody will be vary based on whether or not this is appropriate. Each case is decided on the merits of the case in hand. The presumption is joint and shared, and in the first year that they brought this legislation to pass, it cut the number of court cases in half. So instead of, say, 100 families going to trial over custody, it dropped to 50. So that will, if that trend continues, it will make quicker times for people to get in front of a judge to have decisions made. Currently, I'm going on almost 7 years and have not had a trial in the province of New Brunswick yet on any of the matters. And the judge that I was in front of said the court time is very precious. And he's right about that. It's very precious. And when they get there, they're hearing stories, and instead of making decisions based on the evidence in front of them, they're hearing a story where one parent creates fear, and then they start making decisions out of that fear in case they make a wrong decision. And according to Dr. Stephen Miller, 95% of the time they make the wrong decision because of that.
Wow. Kelsey?
I think the biggest issue here and the biggest piece of the puzzle that's unknown is the trauma and how it impacts the whole family and how it impacts actually all these systems as well. The parent that causes alienation, they tend to have a personality disorder or be very close to being diagnosed with a personality disorder. And those generally arise out of a lot of childhood trauma. They become blind to what's going on. In some cases, they may even become delusional in many cases. So they don't actually see what's going on. So it's for them to correct it themselves isn't going to happen because they don't think it's happening. Then if we look at the other parent, we see the other parent being traumatized as well. The rejected, persecuted parent. So they become traumatized, and people who are experiencing trauma present in a certain way. They present anxious and angry and maybe irritable. And the children are traumatized as well. And when children get traumatized, they attach more to the parent who's causing the trauma, and they pull away from anybody else. And then so that's at the family level. Now, if we look at a bigger level, a societal level, I can give you the example of social work education at Dalhousie University. It's only been within the last few years that they've actually been teaching anything about trauma to social workers. And they had to go outside of their professors' work for Dal and bring in an outside person to teach that. And it was my understanding, and I believe they still are, just about the only person, perhaps the only person in all of Nova Scotia who is teaching trauma and who is trying to instill trauma-informed care in our whole hospital network all across Nova Scotia for 1 million people. One person who is doing the trauma-informed training. So if professors don't know about it at universities, how can they teach their students? It's not like trauma is new. Bessel van der Kolk and others have been talking about trauma since back in the 90s. We're getting close to 30 years on, and still we're not teaching it in our universities. So if we're not teaching it in our universities, how can we expect associate professions like lawyers and judges, or lawyers who then become judges, to understand this? Many of the judges were taught 40 to 50 years ago. That's a long time ago. And lawyers and judges aren't mental health professionals. They aren't trained in this. They don't have fundamental basic training typically that's required. Now, if you look at places like groups like the Manitoba Attachment Network, and what the work that they're doing really focuses around attachments. Attachments were, let's say, discovered or written about back in the 60s and 70s by the World Health Organization, by a guy named John Bowlby, and then later on by Mary Ainsworth. Those things are fundamental, but we've just forgotten about them. They don't teach them in universities. We don't teach trauma. We don't teach trauma-informed care. We don't teach attachments. And we expect that we're going to do this properly. We expect that society is going to be aware of this. So we've got, people often go into those professions because they want to help people. Maybe they're even searching for who they are. And the psychology at Dalhousie is no different. It again has very limited teachings in trauma. If you want to learn about trauma, you need to go somewhere else. But if you don't even know it exists, or to the extent it can impact our society, as a professional, you may not be driven to look for third parties. You've got your training, you've done your research, you've done your work, you've put in the hours, but they just haven't taught you about it. It reminds me of, we talk about the Renaissance period where science came rushing back in a flurry, and a lot of the science that was there hundreds of years before, but we just forgot about it. And it feels like we're at a period of that where people simply don't know, and those who do are so traumatized that it's really hard to share that information with others in a way that they'll listen.
Could it also be because we are not speaking out enough?
Absolutely.
I mean, I compare what's happening in the U.S. To Canada, and I was very honored to be on the Family Access broadcast on Now TV. I was very honored when Elaine Cobbs invited me to speak on faith and parental alienation, and I could see how they are all working together. I mean, there's a huge movement in the U.S. Basically to get the states to overturn some of their laws and to basically have parental alienation laws in place. I think we are a little behind in Canada. Is it because we are not boldly speaking out, or no? It could be because we've just taken a back step to accept things as they are, or we are just not united enough to sort of push back, because we have the data, we have the survey that shows that over 80% of Canadians are in favor of equal shared parenting. 80% of Canadians. Why are we so behind? Bill?
Well, again, I'd like to go back to people like Linda C. Nielsen, who is working at a facility for abused women and children here in New Brunswick, who is denying that parental alienation exists. And I researched some of the papers she wrote for the federal government going back to 2003. So they have someone that's been for almost 20 years saying that parental alienation doesn't exist. And she's recognized as an expert. And I believe Kelsey has ran into some people in Nova Scotia who just came out of training with Linda C. Nielsen saying, "Oh, I'm very aware of what parental alienation is," but all they believe is what they learned from Linda C. Nielsen, which has already been debunked by a report that was released in December of 2021 by Jennifer Jill Harmon out of Colorado and Dimitrios Lorandos, a lawyer, and Karen Woodall, who is, I believe, a forensic psychologist and has a blog out of the UK, wrote an article about their findings, their peer-reviewed report, and the fact that this debunked the theories of Linda C. Nielsen and Joan Meyer, her counterpart in the United States. So we're fighting against 20 years of false information being presented to the government that they believe is an expert in the field on this matter.
Mm-hmm.
And they've already been there for years, and they've had this drilled into them for a number of years. And until they realize that, no, that is not the truth, nothing is going to change, because they believe that it doesn't exist and it's not real.
Wow. It's just rather, unfortunate that, some of these researchers are having their way, right? I believe there's an interest in there for them. And I mean, it's probably safe for me to argue that a lot of the lawyers are behind some of this research, the family lawyers are behind some of this research. I mean, it's good money for them, right? It's
Yes.
good money for them. And anything that would take something out of their pocket, I mean, they'll do everything they can to fight it. You take, most of the politicians are all lawyers. I don't know how many family lawyers are in politics, but I would think that there are quite a good number of them.
That sounds perfect.
You were saying something, Bill?
You'd mentioned there, Ben, about
Mm-hmm.
about people talking about their stories and trying to raise awareness around these issues,
Mm-hmm.
because those things, I think, go hand in hand. What I'm seeing is that if you go to a lawyer, the lawyer will say, don't speak out about this, keep it quiet, or else it'll impact your ability to see your children in court.
Mm-hmm.
Child protection says you can't say anything about your kids, anything that would identify your kids or share with your kids, because that's going to harm the kids. And then you get to court and the judge goes, all of this is private, you can't share any of this. So you're getting scared by your own lawyer who you're paying for, child protection, who at first you think they actually protect the children, and the courts who at first you think are actually fair. And I think what this does is it causes this moral injury in people. It causes people to really question themselves and going, I know I have rights. I know that the Charter of Rights, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom, says that I can have my freedom of expression. But what I'm being told is that if I express if I express these things freely, that it's going to harm me and it may harm my children. So we're being intimidated and threatened by the very people and agencies that are supposed to protect our rights and the rights of our children. Most parents, that hurts. They're already traumatized. They've probably been experiencing years of coercive and controlling family violence, which creates psychological issues. It can lead to things like PTSD, anxiety, and the way that men and women experience coercive control is a little bit different. Men are more anxious, women are more scared, men are more depressed, women are more nervous. It's a little bit different, but the research is now coming out because there is more globally looking at the differences between the sexes or the genders in this issue. But people are nervous and people are scared, and the reality is that you can go and be a good citizen and follow the advice of your lawyer and follow the advice of child protection in the court and not say anything. And if you do that, you will slowly be removed from your children's lives in these cases. If you speak out, you may be removed from your children's lives a little bit faster, but at least your children will know at some point that you tried and you fought and you did what you could for them.
Wow.
I was speaking with a parent recently who said, why don't you get 20 parents together and go on a hunger strike in front of your provincial legislature? Say, we're not moving, we're not leaving here until you do something about this. And in the first 10 days, you might not get a lot of publicity, but you'll get some publicity. And eventually, things he thinks will change. So we need to speak out. We need to get together, because there's a couple of estimates. There's an estimate out of the U.S. that says 22 million parents are affected by this. The U.S. population is 10 times larger than Canada, so that would put us at about 2.2 million. There's an estimate that's come out of the UK recently that says a few more grandparents than that are impacted by this. So if we look at this and we kind of compare those two numbers and we say, make assumptions about, one grandparent for every parent is alienated. There were very easily about 4.5 million parents and grandparents in Canada who are impacted by this. And that's a huge number. 4.5 million Canadian parents and grandparents are alienated.
Wow.
If we could organize even a fraction of those to start writing campaigns to get out there and picket, to start to go on a hunger strike in front of the legislature, there is going to be a time where things change. And we're now in a world where we can connect faster than ever before. We don't have to go to a university and take a 4-year degree to learn about an issue. We have thousands of hours of YouTube videos directly from the world leading experts in these areas. We have Elaine Cobb and others doing a wonderful job. I've learned a lot and heard some really wonderful speakers with her group. I can't speak enough for those people, those experts who are going to her and helping and what she's done. The world is not what it was 10 years ago. And we're hearing from, judges who were educated 40 years ago. The world has changed more in the last 10 years than it has in the last 40. And it's about time that people get together and they stand up for their rights and their freedoms. And we get this matter changed, because children need both parents.
Yeah.
They need love and affection from both parents, from any grandparents that are around, and from aunts and uncles and cousins. And right now, the family courts are not making that happen. They're acting against it because they simply aren't informed and aware and educated of the real core issues and how to determine.
And Kelsey, you're right, because I've been reaching out to a lot of grandparents on the Facebook groups. Somehow people are just terrified to come on the show to share their story. And one comment I had from a grandmom was that she did not want the story to be out there because she does not want the son to get hurt or the son to lose the case just for coming on the show. And I said, no, we need to speak out. The more we speak out, the more awareness we create, the more people get to hear our stories. It's not just you, it's not just me, but like you said, there are about 2.2 million people out there in Canada that are going through the same thing. Imagine this: if all of us come together, right, to protest and demand for a change, I mean, the politicians will act so quickly, but they know that we are not united. They know that there's nothing that is holding us together, even though we have same stories across the board. We don't have a united voice, and that's one of the reasons why I appreciate what Paulette McDonald and Bijan Rafi and all the other groups that are with a team are doing, because they are just trying to create that voice now, which we all need to sort of participate. And for those of you who are watching us tonight, you can connect with Paulette. You can connect with Bijan. I'm gonna put an email address out there right now that you can use that email address to connect to them that you want to join this movement, because we need the voices. The more we speak out, the more we share our stories. And if you're watching us tonight, I'm encouraging you, don't be quiet, don't be silent. This is a time for us to advocate for a change, not just for fathers, but for families, for children, because this is affecting many lives. I mean, people are just committing suicide. We've seen children that have gone through this process, basically just going out there taking guns and just taking lives for no reason, just because of what they've been through, the trauma you were talking about earlier. And we don't need to go through this. Nobody deserves to lose a child. Nobody deserves to lose a mom or a dad. We all need to be able to come together and work in the best interest of the children. And I think politicians do have a responsibility to act. It's not about the votes, or it's not about having a job, on the hill. It's about what's best for the children, for the children. They also have children. I mean, one of the questions I always ask people is put yourself in the shoes of other parents that are struggling or fighting to be in the lives of their children, right? That's one question I ask people. Just put yourself in that shoe. You may have a family that is intact today, but just assume, I don't wish this on anybody, but just, assume that this happens to you. What would you do? Would you join the voices that are fighting to get the laws changed, or you would just isolate yourself? And so, one of the things I think we all need to start doing, like we are doing today, is to speak out. And we need to rally more people to join this movement. We need to get the voices out there. We need to share the stories. Believe me, the stories impact lives. We saw this from last Sunday, with Donna and then Reverend Susan. They came, they shared their own personal stories, and somebody was impacted. Somebody had to make a decision that was in the best interest of their children. And so, we need to start speaking out. I believe that speaking out is the best form of therapy that anybody can receive. It lifts off some burden off your shoulders, and I mean, it goes a long way. It goes a long way to help. So, for those of you watching us tonight, and if you watch this later on, please, it's time for us to speak out. It's time for us to be united. It's a fight not just for one person, but we're all in this together, and we all need to speak out. We all need to voice out some of the experiences that most of us, are going through. Until we do that, some of these people will take us for a joke, right? They'll take us for a joke and conclude that we are just whining and just complaining about everything. Yeah. Bill, thanks to have you back. But do you have any thoughts? Anything to share?
Yeah, I'd like to touch on something that Kelsey mentioned earlier about children, and they're more likely to turn on a loving, caring parent who expresses unconditional love for them than they would be for a parent who withholds affection and has conditions attached to that affection. So, on one hand, they've got a parent that they know is always going to love them no matter what they do or say, and they feel very safe. Then they have another parent who has conditions attached with the love and affection. So they don't get as much love and affection. And to get that love and affection, they have to meet certain requirements. So they're more willing to turn on a parent they know will love them no matter what they do than to not get the affection from the parent who gives it less frequently and doles it out as a sort of reward for compliance with their wishes and what they want. And the courts don't see that. They see a child that doesn't want to go with a parent, and they can't articulate why. They're just afraid. And all they do is hear that they don't want to go with a parent, and they have this image in their head of what this parent is doing to that child to make them feel that way. Instead of recognizing that the child is not saying the parent is bad to them, hurts them, harms them in any way, they're afraid of that parent. Fear is learned or taught. In this case, it's being taught, because if they are being abused by a parent, children are more likely to protect that parent because they know they may lose them. And even though they're getting negative attention, they're still getting attention, and they're afraid that if it's somebody that is not a parent, they'll get even less attention. And they're afraid of losing that. And that's the start of the process where children fail to make proper attachments and develop normally, and the beginning of the pathology of narcissistic or borderline personality disorders.
Kelsey?
Ben, I'd just like to go back to what you were saying about people who are a bit nervous or for reaching out and speaking about this issue. I would encourage them that doing so is actually a form of healing. While there may be some people who push you away and don't believe what you say and don't believe it can be that bad, there are so many people that are going to say, wow, that happened to my brother, that happened to my sister, that happened to a good friend of mine. Or even those who will say, wow, that's exactly what happened to me as a kid. I didn't realize it. And they're supportive. People that know us, they know us, and they know who we are as people. They know that they know what we're going through, and how deeply that we care for our children. They will stand with us and they will support us. And going and speaking will also be healing. It will also start that healing process. It'll help to make sense of the world again. We sort of have the world pulled out from underneath us. We lose our sense of what's right and what's wrong and how does the world work, because the things that are supposed to happen are not happening. And but speaking out and sharing what you've done, and I will absolutely agree that there is a time and a place and a way to do it. Some people aren't prepared to come forward while things are before the courts, and I understand that, and it's up to individuals to time it with their timing. But I will say that it is very healing to connect with others who've gone through this, to understand their stories, to hear how some of the things they went through may have been worse than what you've gone through, and some of the things may not have been quite so bad. But we've all got our story, and if you're traumatized, I mean, you're anxious, you really just want to be heard. And sometimes that comes across as being agitated or angry or irritable. But to find others who have gone through it, who understand what that trauma is like, it can be very healing. And it is also, when you come forward, you build a community. And if we're going to change this, or when we change this, because there are enough communities growing up now that this will get changed in a number of years. The faster we can get together, the faster we can collect ourselves, the faster we can start campaigns, the faster we can get involved with politics, is all predicated on how fast we can heal the trauma that we're experiencing. The faster we can heal the trauma, the faster we can make the change. So I would urge people to speak with their loved ones, to speak with their friends. I would even urge those who are seeing, challenges, to speak with peer support groups. The Canadian Centre for Men and Families has a peer support group. They have a trauma therapy group. If you're experiencing these as a man, I would suggest that you look into those and move forward with them as quickly as you can. Mm-hmm. The longer you stay in trauma, the more you're going to be traumatized, but there are ways through it. And the faster we can get through it and get organized, the faster we will make change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, just to touch on the Canadian Centre for Men and Families, Monique in Alberta reached out to me. She wants to come and, share with the audience on some of the services that, they are providing, for men that are going through a lot of this crisis. There's so much resources out there, and she wants to be able to come on and share this with the audience. But one of the things that, and I can speak from my own personal experience, I think what discourages a lot of us is about the fact that the moment you start going through this process, you have one of the parents who will just, in every way possible, define you or create an image of you that is not real. Meaning, you be, they will go about saying that you are a bad parent, you've done this, you've done like a lot of false allegations. And for some of the dads and for some of the moms out there, they find it very difficult to deal with a lot of these allegations, because eventually you have to come out and start defending yourself, and most people do not have the time to do so. Most people would rather choose to go silent and just ignore everything, ignore the children, and just move on with their lives. For somebody that is going through something like this, where I've heard many people say that I've been defined as something that I'm not. I went through the same thing. I mean, I can put together all the things that have been said to me. I can probably write a book on that. And unfortunately, for every lie that is told, there's always an evidence that's out there to disprove it. And oftentimes people reach out to me, and I tend not to speak too much. I'll just pull out the evidence, the fact, and say, you know what, just read it to yourself, read it for yourself, and draw your own conclusions. And I believe because of this, a lot of people are just not willing to come out, because there's an image that has been created about them. And for some reason they may be feeling embarrassed, I think, to come out and speak because they don't want to sort of uh, come out and justify or basically debunk everything that has been said about them. I believe some are going through this. What would be advice to somebody who is in such a position, Bill?
Well, you need to get help. You can't do this alone. Again, once you're the target of false allegations and scrutiny by police, child protection, the courts, your lawyers. I remember my first lawyer, who was now a master, on her way to becoming a judge in the province of New Brunswick, and I remember her repeatedly calling or sending me emails and asking me questions about lies that were told to her from my ex's lawyer. And she goes, well, what's going on here? What happened there? What's with this? And because she's questioning me about these false stories that were made about me, it would trigger me. And she didn't know whether to believe that I was crazy or if I was telling the truth. And she decided, I believe, that she couldn't tell the difference and said, I can no longer move forward in this process with you. And she left. So that's what happens in most of the cases. The lawyers expect you to listen to them and do as you're told and follow the process because they're the experts and they know how this works. But they don't know what you're going through. Because in New Brunswick, 98% of divorce cases resolve prior to trial, according to the master I was in front of. I thought it was about 95%, but I think that's typically the average for Canada. I know it varies by province. So the master, who was a step before becoming a judge, informed me that 98% is the number in New Brunswick of divorce cases that resolve prior to trial. So every lawyer tries to handle every case the same way, and they don't listen to the problems you're experiencing or know whether you're lying or the other party is lying. And they don't really care. They don't want to know, because then they'd have to make reports to child protection as mandatory reporters of child abuse if they recognize what was going on. So they don't want to know, they don't want to hear, and they want you to be quiet and do what you're told so that they can present their story to the judge and they can make a decision on the stories presented to them without understanding what you're going through or what the real circumstances are. And when they finally realize that they can't handle this case like every other case, they quit. And it's the same for every parent that is the target of alienation. I think I've been through 7 lawyers. And I know there's a number of people that have, this is the same story. They go from one lawyer to the other, and all of them tell them the same things at the beginning. Oh, well, this is wrong what has happened, and we're going to get this settled. And it ends up being the same process again. So there's no recognition of the trauma or who is the victim of the false allegations or the abuse in these situations. They don't care. They don't want to know, because then they'd be complicit in helping one party abuse the other. So they just don't want to know. They don't care. And they just want you to be quiet so they can continue their process, go and make their arguments, and the judge can make a decision.
I had I think I've shared this before. I had the Peel Regional Tactical Police raid my house once on an allegation that I possess a firearm. In one of the case conferences that was filed with the Ontario courts, it says that I waved the firearm in the house, threatening my children that they should keep quiet on things that they see here. I'm gonna hurt them. Right? That was the allegation that it was given to the police. And so for the police hearing something like this, this is a guy. I mean, CAS was involved. They were scared to come to my house because I was branded as this dangerous, guy with a very bad temper. And when I had a meeting with the CS rep, and she was telling me all these things, I was just laughing. I'm like, do you seriously believe all this nonsense? And she's like, well, you have to tell me. And so I gave her the facts. I told her, listen, this is all false. I put her the facts. The police, after they raided my house, called me. I was on my way from work, and then they called me. The a detective at that time called me and said, we are calling to apologize. And I said, why would a police officer be calling me to apologize? For what reason? And he said, well, we had to raid your house. We had a search warrant to go raid your house because, we receive search warrants that you have a firearm in the house. So I asked him, did you find any firearm in my house? He said no. So I said, so what are you guys going to do about it? Right. And so my lawyer at that time knew everything. I shared everything, everything with him. And he knew that this woman was just making things up, right? She was just doing everything possible to see me thrown in jail.
Yes.
And I kept pushing him. I said, listen, you have the facts, you have the truth. What are you doing about it? And for some reason, he was just so reluctant. I mean, with an allegation that was made in the case conference, and she had signed it, that, I'm waving the gun in the house, threatening my children. And the family court did not do anything about it. And even though they knew she was lying, I mean, the facts were there, everything was right up in their faces, but they did not want to do anything about it. Like, it makes no sense to me. It makes no sense whatsoever.
This is, if I can get this one, feel this one. It's the courts. They kind of pick and choose what issues they want to deal with. And when it comes to a matter like that, when you're in family court, they'll say, well, your complaint is a criminal matter, and we are not in criminal court. If you have a complaint that is criminal in nature, you will need to report that to the police. And then at other times, such as in my case, they will award custody to the mother because of an investigation by Child Protection that was caused by her false reports to the RCMP and Child Protection.
Mhm.
They awarded her custody pending the outcome of the investigation. So I was investigated for abusing my son, which would be a criminal matter because it was investigated by the RCMP and Child Protection. So instead of the courts letting the criminal courts, instead of family courts and the judge letting the criminal courts deal with this matter before it influenced the family court, which it's not supposed to because each court is set up to deal with their own issues. The family court used this false information to influence the decision, and the mother was awarded sole custody of the children for an entire summer. Now, this process began on a Monday afternoon for me. I was supposed to pick up my children at 6 p.m. And I did not get them. And by Friday afternoon, she had sole custody. And that's just how easy it is. Also, there were many reports made about me. I'm a jiu-jitsu instructor and have been for about 20 years. But when I was young and growing up, I was picked on and bullied. So when I grew up, I learned karate, boxing, taekwondo, and jiu-jitsu, and I am still a jiu-jitsu instructor and was teaching jiu-jitsu to children in our community at the local community center. Just started again this year. And it was nice to be back, but because I was a black belt in jiu-jitsu, reports were made to the police that I wasn't afraid of anyone and I wouldn't back down from anything. So basically reports were made to make me look like I was crazy, hostile and aggressive, and almost like I was being set up to have the police come and be very hostile and aggressive with me, possibly even to the point of using their weapons against me when I haven't harmed anyone in my life. I've been the victim of bullying and abuse. And the worst bullying and abuse I've ever suffered has been by the police and the family courts and the family court system. And because of that, I'm trying to now fight against them I've ran in the last provincial election for MLA, and if I'm able to, I've applied to law school, but don't know if I'm going to be able to have the funds to start in September. But I would like to return so that I could take them on in their own arena, because right now I don't have the knowledge that they do, and they're using the system and their knowledge of the system to abuse me and other people like me, just like both of us have been abused by this process.
Well,
Sorry, Kelsey, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
yeah, so,
No, I just was going to say that knowingly making false reports to police, that's a criminal offense. That's in the U.S. they call it swatting. They sent the SWAT team to your house, and the FBI and police departments take that very seriously, and they arrest and they prosecute those who do it. It's a waste of our resources. It's encouraging civil disobedience, and why the police didn't open a criminal investigation into that report that was made against you is beyond me. It's an unequal application of the law, and it should have been done. Furthermore, signing an affidavit that is knowingly false, making false statements in that affidavit, is also a criminal offense of perjury. Fabrication of evidence can also be considered. Those also need to be pursued by the courts, both the family courts, because judges and lawyers, their first duty is to the law. It's not to their client. It's not to anything else. It's to the law. And if people are breaking the law and they're letting that happen, they are not doing their duty to the law. They need to uphold the law. So that should be reported as a criminal offense, and the police should be taking that on. But judges refuse to do that. Oh no, this is family court. Those laws don't apply here. Is kind of what it seems to be. But those are two areas where they need to be pursued.
mhm.
So, I mean, I'd just like to touch on the importance of connecting with others. It's a long journey. It's a brutal journey. It doesn't end for those parents who are persecuted, and they just want to help their kids. They just want to see them. So connecting with people, you start to learn about the ins and outs. You start to go, hey, police, why aren't you doing a public mischief criminal investigation on this matter? This meets the terms of Section 140 of the Criminal Code of Canada. Or my children are being harbored against a custody order. Well, that's Section 282 of the Criminal Code of Canada, and the police don't apply that one either, except in extreme cases, or except typically when it's a man who's taking the kids away. If you look at the cases across Canada where that's happened, it's a situation where the more people you're connected with, the more you can heal, the better you can recover, and the more ability you have to recover the relationship with your children and recover your children and be in their lives in a meaningful way. So reach out, speak with people, connect with people, share your story as a healing story. Everyone needs to do this, and it does help.
Yeah, and we almost we're out of time, but Bill, I'm gonna give you some time to share any final thoughts, anything that you want to share with our audience, something that they need to do differently.
I'm with Kelsey. You need support. You need to build a network to help you get through this process. And I'd like to say thank you to Kelsey, because I don't know how long ago it was that I got a phone call from him, but since then we've become very good friends, and we helped support one another throughout this process. And I'd just like to say thank you, Kelsey, for being there for me.
Well, thank you too, Bill.
And Kelsey, any final thoughts?
No, we're all scared. We're all fearful at times, and it's that fear that we need to attack. We need to run headlong towards that fear, because on the other side of fear, good things happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And for those of you that are watching us, I mean, we have a very strong need to come together and advocate for shared parenting. I always end the show on a note for people to reach out to equalparenting22@gmail.com. That's Paulette and Paulette McDonald and Bijan Rafi. Um, they are receiving these emails and they are providing resources for people to reach out to their MPs, and also encouraging people to be advocates of shared parenting. We need every voice. Uh, we can do this on our own, but if you believe that every child deserves both parents, if you believe that a child cannot live a life without a father or a mother, then we need you on board. We need you to join this campaign. And we need to reach out to our politicians. We need to be talking to them. We need to be educating them. Believe me, some of them may not even have a clue of what's happening. But it's also our responsibility to hold them accountable for the office that they hold, and not to disrespect them, but to honor their offices. But also to bring them to that point of letting them know that this is what's happening to us, and there are many more people that this could potentially happen to. And so I thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight. It's always a joy to be on this show talking about our experiences, and also to hear the stories that are out there. It is so important. It's all part of the healing process, right? It's all part of the healing process. So I encourage you, if to join this campaign. We need every voice. We need every voice to make sure that a child life does not become a way that a child will end up blaming somebody, that a mother was not there for me or a dad was not there for me, and that's why I am what I am today. Want to be able to avoid all these things. A mother alone cannot raise a child. A father alone cannot raise a child. It takes both of the parents to work together to raise a responsible child, and we need that in our societies. Thank you so much for your time tonight, and we are back again next Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.